The cry behind the kitchen door. It was a rainy Friday night in Los Angeles, one of those rare evenings when the city slowed down and even the glow of billboards seemed to dim under the drizzle. Inside the sleek glass walls of Motor and Flame, a high-end restaurant tucked between Beverly Hills boutiques and Hollywood studios, the mood was anything but slow. Dishes clattered. Laughter echoed. Wine glasses sparkled under dim chandeliers. The place was buzzing with the rhythm of Friday rush. Nobody noticed the man in the black hoodie who slipped in through the side entrance. No entourage, no camera flashes, no red carpet, just Vin Diesel, actor, producer, and quiet owner of this very restaurant, stepping inside like a shadow. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Vin had built Motor and Flame from the ground up, not just as a vanity side project, but as a tribute to his past, the long, hard years working in kitchens and doing odd jobs before Hollywood had even learned his name. For him, the restaurant wasn't about fame or revenue. It was about pride, respect, family. That's why, every couple of months, Vin would visit without warning. No heads up to the staff. No special treatment. He'd observe from the background, order a meal, and see the truth of things, the kind you couldn't find in spreadsheets or customer reviews. And tonight, something felt off. The energy on the floor was sharp, tight, unnatural. The servers smiled, but there was a tension in their shoulders, a quiet pressure that ran deeper than a simple dinner rush. Vin had just made it past the bar when he heard it, a muffled sob. So quiet it almost disappeared beneath the sounds of sizzling pans and polite laughter. But it was there, fragile, raw, from somewhere behind the kitchen hallway. Vin froze. For a few seconds, he didn't move. He just listened. Then he slowly stepped toward the back, passing the busy pass window where chefs plated lamb chops and sea bass under heat lamps. A heavy steel door marked staff only was slightly ajar. And behind it, he saw her. A young server, barely more than 21, hunched over a metal counter in the break room. Her apron was still on, her name tag askew. Her hands were trembling as she tried to drink from a water bottle, but her fingers were shaking too hard to hold it steady. Silent tears ran down her cheeks, and every few seconds, she clenched the edge of the counter as if she were physically holding herself together. Beside her, a fellow employee, also in uniform, whispered something urgently. Vin couldn't hear the words, but he saw the panic in the young man's eyes. The fear. This wasn't burnout. This wasn't a bad tip or rude customer. This was something else. Something much worse. Vin took a slow step back, easing away from the doorway so they wouldn't see him. He wasn't ready to confront. Not yet. He needed to understand what was happening. He made his way back toward the bar, his expression calm, but inside, his gut churned. He'd seen tears in restaurants before, burnt-out servers, overworked chefs. But this was the kind of crying people did when they felt trapped, when someone had power over them. He ordered a glass of water and leaned against the counter, eyes scanning the room. And that's when he saw him, the manager. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharp face, watching everything too closely, arms crossed, posture military, gaze cold. He wasn't checking on tables. He was patrolling them. The way he spoke to the hostess, the way servers stiffened as he walked by. Predator. Vin's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, the male server from the break room emerged, walking briskly toward the kitchen. His face was flushed. He wiped his hands on his apron. Then he headed toward the back server station. Now was the time. Vin stood and intercepted him with quiet confidence. "Hey," Vin said softly, flashing a disarming smile. "You got a pen?" The young man blinked, clearly caught off guard. Yeah, sure." He pulled one from behind his ear and handed it over. "Thanks, Tyler," Vin said, glancing at the name tag. Tyler froze slightly at the sound of his name. You're welcome." Vin didn't leave. He stayed right there, lowering his voice. "Your friend." Vin nodded subtly toward the break room. "She okay?" Tyler stiffened. "Yeah, she's fine. She doesn't look fine." Tyler's eyes flicked nervously toward the dining area, then down at his shoes. "It's just personal stuff," he mumbled. "Not work-related." That was a lie. A protective one. Vin didn't push. He just kept his tone calm. Personal stuff doesn't make someone cry like that. Not at work. Not like this. Tyler swallowed hard. He looked like he wanted to speak, like he needed to. She's scared," he finally said in a whisper, "but she won't tell anyone. Not even HR, because she's afraid they'll take his side." Vin's jaw clenched. Whose side? Tyler didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because just then, the manager walked over. Smooth. Calculated. "Everything all right over here?" he asked with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Vin straightened, his body language casual, but his presence suddenly bigger, heavier. "Just asking Tyler for a pen," he replied coolly. "Nothing major." The manager looked at Tyler, then at Vin. Something flickered behind his eyes. Suspicion, maybe. But he gave a tight nod. "Let's stay focused, Tyler. Dinner service isn't over." "Yes, sir," Tyler muttered, avoiding eye contact. Vin watched the manager walk away. And that's when he made up his mind. He wasn't leaving tonight. Not until he knew exactly what this man was doing to his staff. Not until the girl behind the break room door no longer had a reason to cry. The quiet revolt. Vin stood in the shadows of his own restaurant, watching the man he trusted to lead, Rick Callahan, make his rounds like a prison warden inspecting inmates. It was subtle, the way Rick operated. He never raised his voice. He didn't bark orders or throw tantrums like other bad managers. No, Rick's weapon was silence. Tight smiles, veiled threats, and power moves that didn't leave bruises but bruised dignity. And it worked. Until now. The air felt different when Vin returned inside after a few minutes outside with the bartender, Nate. He had the confirmation he needed, and yet his gut told him that what he knew so far was just the surface. He couldn't take action based on feelings alone. If he wanted to take Rick down the right way, clean, public, irreversible, he needed evidence. And trust. He turned to Nate, the young bartender who had unknowingly handed him a thread to pull. "You said she's always the one he makes stay late?" Vin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nate hesitated. "Yeah, every Friday. Sometimes Tuesdays too. Says it's for inventory checks. But we all know that's not it. No one else has to stay. Just Emily." Vin's chest tightened. He'd hoped this was an exaggeration, one of those workplace misunderstandings blown out of proportion. But no, this was a pattern, a trap, one built quietly and precisely to ensure only one person suffered while the others remained too scared to help. "How long's Rick been here?" Vin asked. "Year and a half," Nate replied. "He wasn't always like this. At first, he seemed strict but fair. Then it got weird. The schedules changed. Fewer breaks, more rules. And Emily, she became his focus." Vin nodded slowly, his mind racing. "Would you be willing to talk to corporate if I arranged it?" Nate's eyes widened. "Me? You've seen what's happening. You're not just a bystander anymore." Nate looked away, staring at his hands. Then, after a long breath, he nodded. "Yeah, I'll talk. But I'm scared for her." Vin placed a hand on his shoulder. "So am I. But fears how guys like Rick stay in power." He turned away, already planning his next move. But as he headed back toward the kitchen hallway, something caught his eye. Emily was walking across the floor, a tray in her hands. Her movements were graceful, mechanical, like muscle memory. But her eyes were empty. That same hopeless glaze he had seen in young actors back in the early days of Hollywood, when they were trapped in contracts with studios who owned their lives. Vin stepped into her path gently, blocking her just as she reached table 7. "I'll take it from here," he said quietly, lifting the tray from her hands. Emily blinked. "Sir, I need to speak with you," he said. "Right now," she whispered, confused. "Yes, now." Vin turned to the diners. "Apologies, folks. Your server just got called into a quick meeting. Drinks on the house." The couple nodded, and Vin gently guided Emily to the side hallway, away from the crowd, but not in the break room. Not in the lion's den. He stopped by a wall where old black and white photos of Vin's early days lined the space. Photos of him at the grill, sweating in the kitchen, chopping onions with a cracked cutting board and a plastic knife. Emily looked at them, then back at him, confused. "I used to cry in the kitchen," Vin said. "Back in New York. First job. I was 17. The head chef would scream at me for cutting the carrots wrong." Emily's lips quivered. "That's awful." He shrugged. "Made me stronger, but not everyone's pain should be justified by growth. Some pain should never happen in the first place." She swallowed, eyes shining. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw you earlier, in the break room. And I know about the late shifts. I know how Rick treats you." Emily froze. Panic washed across her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't say anything. He'll find out I told someone." Vin shook his head. "You didn't tell me. I found out, and I'm not going to let this slide." Tears welled up again, but this time, she wiped them away quickly. "You don't understand. I need this job. I help my mom with rent. My little brother is still in high school. We don't have anyone else. If I lose this job, you won't." "But Rick said, Rick doesn't own you." She looked away. Vin continued, "You've got 2 options. You stay quiet, and he keeps doing this to you. And maybe the next girl too. Or you help me take him down." Emily looked up sharply. "Take him down?" Vin nodded. "Clean. Official. No drama. But permanent." Her voice cracked. "How?" "I need you to wear a mic." Emily recoiled like she'd been slapped. I can't," she stammered. "He'll know. He'll see. Not if we do it right," Vin said calmly. "Just one conversation. Record him pressuring you. That's all we need." She hesitated, trembling. "What if he touches me again?" Vin's jaw clenched. Then he'll never walk free again. Emily stood there, caught between fear and hope. For the first time in months, someone was offering her a way out. A real way. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll do it." 2 hours later, the restaurant was winding down. Only a handful of guests remained. Rick Callahan walked the floor like he always did after the rush, smug, composed, king of his castle. He stopped at Emily's side, speaking low. "Stay late tonight," he said. Emily stiffened. "Rick, I'm really tired. Can't someone else?" His smile turned colder. "I wasn't asking." Vin stood by the bar, pretending to read a menu. But he caught it all. Emily swallowed hard. "Okay." She walked toward the back office. Rick followed. Vin gave Nate the signal. Moments later, a tiny device in Vin's hand began recording everything from Emily's hidden mic. Inside the office, Rick leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. "I told you before, Emily," he said in that same sickeningly smooth tone. "There's what's written in the employee handbook, and then there's what really keeps this place running." Emily sat on the edge of the chair, hands clenched. "I don't understand why you always make me stay." "Because you're smart," he said. "And you know how things work. You do what I say, you get to keep this job. It's that simple." Emily's breath caught. "What if I don't want to?" Rick's smile widened. "Then I can't guarantee your next paycheck will clear. You know how easy it is to lose a few hours here. Maybe switch your schedule to something less flexible. Shame, really. Your mom's medical bills aren't going to pay themselves." Emily's jaw trembled. "But if you keep being my little helper," Rick leaned forward, "I'll make sure you're well taken care of. Who else here gets weekend bonuses?" Silence. Then, click. The office door swung open. Vin stepped inside, mic still in hand. Rick jumped from his seat. "What the?" "Game over," Vin said. Rick's eyes darted to the mic, then to Emily. "You set me up," he growled. "No," Vin replied. "You set yourself up. I just hit record." He placed the device on the desk, then pulled out his phone. "Security's already on the way. So is legal. You're done. Rick, you can't prove anything." "We have everything," Vin cut him off. "The audio, the statements, witnesses, even your scheduling records. You've been abusing your position for over a year." Rick's face turned a sickly shade of white. "I'll sue you." Vin chuckled. "You'll be lucky if you walk out of here without cuffs." Back on the floor, the employees stood frozen as security escorted Rick out through the side doors, his face covered in sweat and disbelief. The restaurant, once filled with quiet oppression, now filled with whispers of hope. Emily stood with Nate and Tyler, watching as the door closed behind the man who had made their lives miserable. Vin turned to the staff. "From now on," he said, his voice clear and strong, "this place belongs to you just as much as me. No more fear. No more silence." The staff exchanged looks. Emily took a small step forward. "You kept your promise," she said, voice shaking. "You said I wouldn't be alone." Vin gave her a nod. "You never were." A new kind of leadership. The rain had stopped by morning, but the storm had only just begun, for those who ran from accountability. By 10 a.m., Vin Diesel sat at the far end of a long wooden conference table inside the very restaurant he built. No cameras, no press, just a group of pale-faced corporate executives, HR reps, and regional managers who had rushed over after the events of the previous night exploded through internal messaging channels like a wildfire. At the center of it all sat a small black recording device. Still, silent, powerful. Vin's voice was calm, but carried the weight of thunder. For over a year, Rick Callahan used this place like his playground. And all of you were either too blind, too comfortable, or too lazy to notice. No one dared interrupt. A regional VP adjusted his tie nervously. "We had no official complaints logged, sir. Nothing actionable." "That's the point," Vin snapped, eyes locked on him. "You think silence means everything's fine. But in reality, silence is how fear survives." He leaned forward. "There are good people in this building. They cook, they serve, they mop floors, they stay late. And they trusted us. We failed them." HR tried to interject. "We've already begun formal proceedings against Callahan." "This isn't about Rick anymore," Vin cut in. "It's about every Rick hiding in your other locations. Every toxic manager who knows how to stay just on the right side of legal. That ends today." He stood, towering over the room. "I'm taking direct oversight of Motor and Flame's hiring and operations moving forward. I'll handpick a new general manager. And we're installing a zero-tolerance reporting system. Anonymous, immediate, with outside monitoring. If someone abuses power, we'll know." He paused, then added, "And if anyone retaliates against an employee for speaking up, they'll be out the door faster than Rick was." The room was silent. "I suggest you all get comfortable being uncomfortable," Vin finished, "because we're not in the restaurant business anymore. We're in the respect business, starting now." He didn't wait for applause. He wasn't there for that. He walked out, stepped into the sunlight, and called the one person he needed to speak to more than anyone else. Back at the restaurant, 3 p.m. Emily stood at the host stand, nervously adjusting the collar of her new black blouse. It wasn't a uniform anymore. It was something Vin had asked her to wear, because this afternoon wasn't just another shift. It was a moment of recognition. She hadn't slept much. After everything that happened the night before, She kept waiting to wake up and realize it had all been a dream. That Rick would be back, that nothing had changed. But he was gone. And for the first time in months, she walked into the restaurant without the knot of anxiety in her chest. Tyler and Nate were already there, prepping for the evening shift. The mood was lighter. Music played in the background, a playlist someone had actually picked, not the sterile corporate loop Rick insisted on. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. It felt like a different place. Emily caught sight of Vin walking in from the back entrance, wearing jeans and a gray Henley. He nodded at a few employees as he passed. People whispered, smiled, offered grateful glances. When he reached her, she didn't know what to say. But Vin, as always, made it easy. "You sleep." "A little," she admitted. "You eat?" "Coffee and a granola bar." He chuckled. "That's not food." "I'm working on it." They both smiled, genuine smiles this time. "Come with me," he said. He led her toward the dining room where, at the very center, a long table had been arranged with pastries, fruit, and fresh-pressed juice. A few employees gathered around it, looking confused. Vin gestured to the table. "Today's not about customers. It's about you." Emily blinked. "What do you mean?" Vin turned to the group. "This restaurant belongs to all of us. It's not just a business. It's a family. And a family protects each other." He glanced around the room. Most people see a server. They see someone who brings them food. I see a human being who stands for hours, memorizes dozens of orders, deals with rudeness, pain, stress, and still smiles. That deserves more than tips. It deserves respect. The employees nodded, some tearing up. Vin turned to Emily. "You were brave. You could have stayed quiet. But you didn't. And because of you, this place is safer for everyone." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't feel brave." "That's how you know you were," he said. "Real courage never feels like a movie. It feels like shaking knees and a fast heartbeat. And doing it anyway." He paused. "I want to offer you something." Emily looked confused. "Offer?" Vin pulled out a slim folder. Inside, a formal document. A contract. He handed it to her. She opened it, skimmed the top line. Her jaw dropped. "You're offering me a..." She gasped. "A management mentorship," Vin confirmed. "Starting today, you'll train under our senior leadership program. If you want it. No pressure." Emily's eyes filled again. But these tears felt different. Lighter. Grateful. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll believe in yourself as much as I believe in you." She laughed softly. "That might take some time." "Good," Vin said. "That's how every great leader begins." 2 weeks later, a public shift. The buzz around Motor and Flame had reached the press. Whispers of Vin Diesel's surprise visit, the sudden termination of a manager, and the quiet revolution inside the restaurant became local headlines. But Vin didn't care about the headlines. He cared about follow-through. He launched a campaign internally across all his restaurants under his hospitality group. One Voice, it was called. A company-wide initiative that encouraged every single employee, from dishwasher to sous chef, to speak out about mistreatment, mismanagement, or harassment. He hired trauma counselors to provide free sessions for any staff who had experienced abuse or stress in past workplaces. And he ensured that employees didn't just have a voice, they had power. Emily became the face of the first internal video campaign. Nervously, she sat in front of a camera, wearing the same black blouse, hands fidgeting. Then she looked up and spoke. "I thought keeping my head down was the safest choice. But silence isn't safety. Speaking up is." The video played across every location's breakroom screen for a week. And something incredible happened. Complaints came in. Real ones. Hidden ones. Managers in other locations were flagged. Some quit. Others were removed. But more importantly, employees finally felt seen. Back at Motor and Flame. A month later, the restaurant gleamed with fresh energy. New art hung on the walls. The menus had been redesigned with input from the kitchen staff. Emily now wore a sleek black vest, assistant manager badge pinned proudly. She walked through the dining room with purpose, checking on servers, greeting customers. But there was something deeper in her walk now. Confidence. Power. Not the kind Rick had used. The controlling kind. The kind that lifted others. Vin sat at the corner table, watching quietly as she handled a scheduling issue like a pro. When she spotted him, she walked over with a grin. "Need anything, Mr. Diesel?" "Yeah," he said, smiling. "A table for one. And a reason to keep doing what I do." Emily blushed. "You already have one." Final scene. Message to the audience. Vin looked straight into the camera. The restaurant was quiet behind him, golden light bouncing off the walls. You don't have to be a celebrity to make change. You just have to be present. You have to care. He leaned in slightly. If you're in a position of power, use it to lift others, not to control them. If you're not in power, never let anyone convince you that silence is your only option. He paused. And if you see someone crying quietly behind a kitchen door, don't walk past. That moment could change everything. Fade out.